Frogman Friday.
Yeah, boy. What's up, guys? It's that time again. Welcome to the Frogman Friday show. Presented by Transcend, the best peptide and hormone therapy. They put your health first so you can live more and worry less. Go to transcendcompany.com/Birdman to begin your wellness transformation today. Today, our badass guest is Clint Emerson. He served over 20 years as a Navy SEAL, exiting as a Chief Petty Officer. He's an author, instructor, and show host, founding Escape the Wolf in 2015, located in Dallas, Texas. You can follow Clint on all social media channels, and to take a deeper dive, go check out clintemerson.com. Brother, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ryan. It's good to be here.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has. Well, hey, I always like to kick it off with this because a lot of people just see what you're doing today and they're like, wow, this guy's killing it outside of the service, killed it inside of the service. But we missed that transitional period. What was your transition like?
Oh, that's a good question. I came out like some guys with a little bit of I had a lot of things on my plate, right? I was saying yes to everything like a French hooker and realized very quickly that, okay, I've actually got to follow through on everything I've said yes to. So that keeps you busy, which was great, right? I was task saturated, didn't have time to think about much of anything. But one thing I've noticed is when you do that, you're just delaying the inevitable, right? Especially when you're on the JSOC train, that thing travels at the speed of light. And when you get off of it, any baggage you have is obviously going to slam and hit you in the back of the head, right? But what I did through all that task saturation and saying yes to everything is delay. And then, between 5 and 6, 7 years out, then all of a sudden that's when I felt the transition, right? It was like things slowed down. I started kind of backing off all the different endeavors and had time. And then once you have time, then all of a sudden now you're reliving some of the stuff you never had a chance to relive, whether it's, the dark stuff, like the funerals and all the things we went to, we were there, but we weren't really there. Right.
Yeah.
And, some of that stuff, caught up and, I'm not a big PTSD guy, but then I finally got it. I was like, okay, this is probably what guys are talking about. This is probably what they're feeling. And, then you start kind of rolling through it and dealing with it and then moving on to the next endeavor, and then get busy again. So I would say I was pretty lucky on the transition, just having plenty of stuff to do and then having enough foresight to synthesize any issue that popped up while still moving forward, which was the key, right? You just got to keep moving forward every day and you'll be okay eventually, no matter what issues may be plaguing you. So yeah, it wasn't too bad. I can't knock it, man. Compared to some of my buddies, your buddies, it's like they get out and they have no idea what they're doing and they have absolutely nothing on their plate. And that's when usually things go south.
No question. Well, it's something interesting because I did the same thing you did. I got out and I just started hammering down, signing up for everything. I'm invested in the community. I want to do everything I can. The one thing that I feel like I lacked before I even got to uncover that box that I had put behind me was I wasn't seeing my teammates.
Mm-hmm.
It was moving so fast as a civilian that I forgot where I came from.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, and it's funny, a buddy of mine was like, you seem off. I'm like, what do you mean? I feel great. And he's like, something's just not right with you. It's like, you need to see your teammates. And I'm like, oh my gosh, have I gotten to that place? And he's like, yeah, you need to go back to San Diego, see your boys. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. And he's like, well, good. I already booked you a trip. And I'm like, really? So I went out there to see the guys and it was that extra oomph of like, okay, cool. But it's awesome that you did that. And that we all have that energy where we want to just go attack life and everything that comes to it. But you do have that plateau and then that dip where you're like, there's stuff I need to deal with. So
yeah,
well, I'm glad you didn't burn it down. like some guys did.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, well, there's always opportunity in the future for that. So,
Yeah, man. Yay. So let's get into. I've watched your shows. I've read your book. You have many books, but we read the last one, The Rugged Life, and there's a lot of things that I want to know about. Like, how did you get into this world of really wanting to showcase to people that you could be your own weapon, you could be more understanding of things, and out there. Like, how did you get into this world? Because me being a SEAL, I don't know that side. I don't know combatives. I mean, I'm a gunfighter. That was my deal.
Hmm.
Most SEALs deal. You're different. You've got a well-rounded atmosphere of all that. So how did you get into that world?
It probably started with Escape the Wolf. So I wrote that book while I was still at the NSA, and it wasn't a book; it was a 3-ring binder. And so here I was teaching this incredibly badass course that took operators and turned them into operatives, right? And so you had all walks of life sitting in the classroom every day, um, and I was putting out all this information that were lessons learned from my own singleton deployments, right? So when I was there, if I wasn't teaching a course, then I was overseas by myself doing a wazoo weird stuff for the NSA. And so it forced me to start looking beyond little black boxes and rifles and night vision, right? If you're going to go deploy as a singleton by yourself, which we call like the naked warrior kind of philosophy, right? I'm going to
Yep.
be business class, wearing business casual, and I'm going to go overseas, and I can't carry all my goodies with me, right? So then you have to be better at adapting, better at awareness, better at improvisation, right? And know how to leverage, um, whether it's an open air souk or a supermarché or wherever you can get what you need to accomplish the mission. So when I went through all that training and then started teaching it, I started realizing just how incapable I was. And I wanted to be the most capable person that I could be. So basic electronics, electricity, modification of consumer products, it all became like, okay, an obsession, right? Like I rather have all the skills than all the toys any day of the week, because with the skills, I can accomplish pretty much anything. If I want to go to a souk and buy a 1990 whatever answering machine. I know that an answering machine has a DTMF board in it, which is dual tone multi-frequency board. I know that there's 8 relays on that, open and close, which is 16 command functions, which means when you call an answer machine and press 1 for fast forward, press 2 for rewind, press 3 for whatever, that DTMF board is what allows you to do those functions. And the beauty of it is if I can take that DTMF board out, I can hook a cell phone up to it, right? So now the inbound call comes into the cell phone, then goes to put it on auto answer. Now the DTMF board is open to a command. Then I can put whatever I want on the other end of that board, right? So just an example of the creativity is if there's a target, I got to break into his vehicle, do a deep install using parasitic power, the cell phone, a DTMF board, and I hook it up to certain fuses so that when he leaves his house, he's going down the alley. I can call the phone. I can press 1. That makes his fuel pump start to go off, which will cause his car to kind of sputter. And I can press 2 and his airbag will go off and knock him the fuck out. And then some dudes that you and I know about can roll in, pull him out of the car, and he disappears, right? That is the short version of what led me down the path of, okay, there's more to all of this than any of us could ever imagine. And at that point, for the rest of my career, I was like, I gotta learn as much as possible that allows you to be as creative as possible. And so Escape the Wolf was a 3-ring binder of like these tricks of the trade. It got passed around in the government. It got passed around the contracting world. It ended up in the hands of this guy named Joe Canamesa, who is the global security director for the Wall Street Journal. And he's like, all this stuff you've got in this book, I want my journalists to know. So come out here and teach everybody. And I was like, I'm in the Navy. I can't pull that off, man. Yeah. And so that was the day the book in itself kind of became a company, because I put him on hold, continued my career, figured things out. And then the very first contract I had for Escape the Wolf that went from a book to a company was the Wall Street Journal, and kind of turned the whole book into e-learning so that his 700 most elite journalists could just take it from afar. So we deployed it onto his servers. Back then, e-learning was very GUI, and you had to click on things on the screen and this and that, and it was very interactive.
Mm-hmm.
These days, it's just videos, right? E-learning has just become videos across the board, 8 minutes or less, using adult learning criteria so people don't get bored, and you got to make it interactive on the screen, moving back and forth from different frames and blah, blah, blah. But so yeah, man, like that's the shortest answer I can give you is go doing those operations, then go noticing that, wait, other people can really benefit from this stuff, and putting it into the book, and then confirming it when the book turned into a company with that contract. And then I've been doing that stuff ever since. So,
Wow. Well, you've penned several books now.
yeah.
So it's just you keep adding to the tradition of more learning, more learning, more learning.
Yeah, exactly. You've seen how I've done it. I go around and I interview subject matter experts in different silos of information, and then combined it all together and also it's all illustrated. So you're making it easy for people to digest. Literally, they can look at a skill, get up off their couch, and go do it right then and there is the goal, right?
Yep.
But as I've heard from many readers, it's definitely the most popular set of books next to a man's toilet. So that's fine too.
That's where we do our best work, though.
Exactly. That's where I learned the most.
Yeah, it was funny because, living near each other. And then when I went to hear you speak at that woman's club that one night, I mean, first of all, you're super articulate and you're very good at weaving the story. You can deviate from where everybody think you're going, and then you come back full circle and you tie it all together really well. So I was like,
Oh, thanks.
typically when I hear a team guy speak, I'm like, I'm going to be there to support you, but I'm bored. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, cool, everything you've done. Are you talking about me? But this one with your story, it was like, holy shit, this is super cool. So, when you teaching people, is there a genre that you focus on? Is there an age group? Like, how does somebody come to you and say, I want to learn from you?
A lot of it is, as you know, keynote based. A lot of corporations, for the most part, that's where a majority of all of my speaking, like educating the workforce, has been a full time job for me. So whether it's basic awareness stuff, travel safety, security, medical, cyber threat awareness, natural disaster, and then of course the big one, right? Active shooter. And then second to that is social unrest. So educating workforces and companies on the proper protocols that they can put in place that are actually realistic, that can keep their workplace safe, and then also protect their assets, which is their people and their buildings. And so a lot of times it's all contracted through Escape the Wolf, and we'll roll in and knock out whatever they want. But tethered together with that is good policy. This is the boring stuff that a lot of guys don't want to do, and that is put together bulletproof policies that go hand in hand with general liability, worker comp, insurance programs. And, so that's the risk department. We build the policies that have all the protocol in it. And when you mesh it together properly, now if something happens and everybody wants to sue you, you're probably going to end up on the better end of that deal rather than the not so good end of the deal. So, because you have to have both these days, you got to have the insurance, you got to have the policy, it has to be current. And even the insurance companies these days, they don't want to write a check to a company that doesn't have any policy in place, and are going to, it's called negligence at this point. You can't say that you didn't know about mass shootings and active shooter. You just can't say that anymore. Or, we didn't think it was going to happen to us. So even the insurance companies expect you to have a lot of stuff in place. It's OSHA regulated, state regulated, but that's the boring stuff that I spend a lot of time doing as well.
Well, I mean, you think about all of that, that's a ton of work, dude. That is a ton of work. I know I've been asked to speak or to teach a small school. And I was like, my God, I'm prepping and prepping and prepping. And that's one school, man,
Yeah.
like to a corporation or whatever. So it's word of mouth, and you do public speaking where you talk about a little bit of your career and then how you do what you do today. And that leads into them hiring you as a contract to actually perform for the entire corporation, whatever,
Yeah.
whoever hires you. And then you perform with them for a long
Exactly.
contract.
However, yeah, exactly. However long it takes. So I can give an open example would be Humana, right? It's a $64 billion company. They're both insurance and medical provider, which is rare. And built their entire workplace violence program. It took years. We built all the curriculum, which was all video based, deployed it onto their servers, and educated 65,000 employees. Right. So that's one of many of the, Fortune 1000 above, but I also do places of worship, some of the big mega churches in Texas. I've done some of the private schools up in the Northeast that, like Harrison Ford's kids and, really famous people's kids go to. And it's the famous people that said, hey, school, when are you going to actually do something about what we're seeing in the news? So I've been fortunate enough to kind of go and build out these programs, or take a current program that was built like in 1996, especially these longer standing companies that, that have been around for a while, and just clean them up and get them current again.
Got it. You're
Yeah.
like the civilian red cell. No question about it.
Yeah. So that's the sexier stuff, right? So red teaming, it's basically a bet with the company. If I can't get in, then you don't have to pay me. And so probably one of the more popular stories was a massive defense contractor that's based out of Hartford, Connecticut. And they have a 27-story gold building. Anybody who knows Hartford, Connecticut knows there's two gold buildings, gold mirrored, kind of. One has a helipad on the top, one doesn't. And they hired us to say, hey, let's see if you can get in. And of course, any team guy is going to win. It doesn't even matter if they have my skill sets or not.
Yeah.
But the lessons learned from that is directly connected to policy and protocols they just didn't have in place. We all laugh at like a lanyard or the badge, but a lanyard is a far recognition signal. Hey, when I see you from afar and you're wearing my lanyard, I'm wearing yours, we know each other, right? Even though we don't work together, I know that guy's good to go. And as I get closer, near recognition is the badge that has the proper picture, and it can actually, activate access control. But most of the time I get into these companies just through cell phone to my ear, my Starbucks in my other hand, and I'm pretending to have a conversation with somebody, and people are just holding doors open for me all the way to the CEO's office. But we got in, you get into the stairwells, you don't take the elevators, go all the way to the top. We'll perch on the top floor until the building closes that night. Once they close, they set the alarm system. Then usually somewhere around 10 p.m. to midnight, your cleaning services will roll in. They disarm it. Now we have the whole building to ourselves. One of our calling cards is for that particular target, we took the chairman's office and switched all the furniture with his vice chairman's office, right? So, and when the executive, so nobody knows, right? Just the general counsel knows that we're doing this. So we know, the general counsel knows the 30-day window, and only we know the 96-hour block that we're going to hit. And
Got
no
it.
one else knows, right? We don't want a false positive or a false negative. So, we'll get in, basically take pictures and collect as much information as we can. But here's a lesson learned to your listeners, right? You're a chairman, you're a CEO, whatever you are, your executive assistants are your biggest threat, because this particular chairman had 4 EAs. Okay.
Wow.
And 2 of them were probably personal assistants. The other ones were executive. And all the passwords to everything she had in her desk, all the family's passports, all in one of the other desks. They had a binder, right? This particular company owns 22 multi-billion-dollar companies, right? So,
Wow.
and the chairman has this binder that he gets once a week and it has 22 tabs in it, and it's all the current contracts and everything going on with all 22 of his big companies. So it's like the cliff notes, right, for him to keep track of awareness of everything going on with his portfolio. And yeah, you're able to take pictures of every contract, took all that information, took everything we could. And of course, the last thing is, let's switch out the furniture. And then when that morning, when we're done, the first executive assistant that came in that morning sees what happened and immediately called 911, right? So the cops roll in, and then of course, then that's when the GC is like, hey, this was all a threat and vulnerability assessment, to look like foreign intel or look like criminal, because we can look like either foreign intel or we can look like a criminal threat, depending on the company. And yeah, it's the best. That is the best job in the world.
That's got to be like a complete mind fuck to that EA when they're like, I think we're broken into. I'm not sure, but the all the stuff's been switched. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
what to make of this. Like, they changed their fucking desks. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
fun.
that is so cool though. I mean, because one, you get to have so much fun doing that and finding the weak points. I mean, are you hiring? I'm in. That's awesome.
Yeah, for
But then
sure.
two, you learn a shit ton about all of this for other companies too. Because that's one thing I learned just being an instructor in assaults is you learn so much more when you teach it as opposed to just doing it.
For sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So
You learn like social engineering is real, and you learn just how easy it is and how gullible people are, because that's all I'm doing is, has there been times when we red team and you're scaling a building? Yeah, kind of, you're using emergency fire ladders, external or whatever you can. But majority of the time you're using social engineering to get in and to get a foothold. And then once you have the foothold, then you're relying on human behavior and how much they fail at paying attention to be able to maintain that foothold, right? And social engineering is real. It's the most dangerous thing to business these days, because it really combines two or three things. It's creativity, emotion, and psychology, right? And when you put those three things together in a nefarious way, man, we see it every day, whether it's through emails or just phone calls, people fall victim to that social engineering piece on a regular basis. And we're doing it at like a JV level and still getting in or still getting past the front desk or whatever it is we're attacking, So it's real and dear, and people should definitely pay attention more.
there's no question. I mean, being able to hire security guard, having camera systems is all well and good, but each individual has to be that first responder type, have to have some kind of
Yeah.
information because they can't keep track of everything, especially when you're talking about multi-billion-dollar companies or corporations. There's just too much. And as a civilian, and I've even done this myself, you get complacent no matter what. I'm so busy. I got this work to do. I got to send these emails. I got to pick up my kids. And you're like, did you even look out around you to see what's happening right now? I dropped
Yeah.
the ball completely. So
No, you've nailed it. And that goes back to there's a seesaw or a scale, if you will, a balance. In one hand is convenience, and the other is security. And so anything that's convenient is not secure, and anything that's secure is not convenient. So companies all over the world are always trying to find the balance because they want their employees to come to work and they want them to leave and they want it to be as smooth as possible. But in order to do that, you got to give up some security to have that convenience factor. And that applies to everything. That's on the cyber world, physical security, you name it. That is the battle right there.
interesting, man. Is there a certain amount of clients that you handle at one time, or can you handle a massive scale? Because I know people listening to this, specifically the people that listen to this, you're going to be getting hit up pretty quickly because they need this. So can you handle, or do you
Yeah.
choose?
Yeah. No, I definitely can scale based on clients coming in and out and depending on their requirements. Like you, and I mean, it's the 1099 world is great, right? I pull in experts, whether it's OSHA attorneys or whatever I need. I pluck them, they're current, I use them for that particular client based on what they need, and then move on, right? So, and then on the workforce education side, I've got a production team that puts together incredible videos that people want to watch about boring stuff. So that is the key too, right? How do you make something boring, like actually entertaining and informative at the same time? And so we've kind of figured that out. And then of course on the tools and the things, the other thing, employee handbooks and all your leadership handbooks as it relates to safety and security. We've got a company that prints those things out literally by the thousands all the time and ship them to our, resupply our current clients, but yeah, it's pretty easy to ramp anything up depending on their requirements.
Well, good for you for doing all that, because I've seen a lot of this where you get good at one thing and you really focus on that, but then you have all these other things that you offer and you do them half-ass.
Yeah.
And I've seen that so much. And with I've seen you. I mean, you do your posts where you're actually putting your boxes together to ship out. By the way, are you still making those really cool kit boxes?
Well, each time, yeah. I mean, every time there's a book release, I think I'm at like 8 or 9 books. But I had this like crazy goal. I'm going to do one a year for every year I'm out, and I got to what, 8, 9 years now. And I'm kind of like, okay, I'm done. I've put enough skills to educate the world at this point. So, but each time you release a book, you kind of send out influencer boxes. Has become quite the trend. And yeah, so I still have those. And then of course, apparel and, all the stuff that we all kind of have, you have your own little brands that splinter off of the main brand. And
For
that's
sure.
that point we were talking about where, now I've got apparel and I got this and I got that. And, and now that's when you start juggling and things start to fall out and you realize, okay, I need to cut back on some responsibility here and, concentrate on one, what are you passionate about? What makes you happy and what are you good at, and stick with it,
I'm super guilty of that. In fact, I created a company called Super Duper Stunts just to do crazy stunts, and it's fun. And I made the t-shirt because I always said, if I make the t-shirt, I'm doing the company.
Yeah.
So that's a t-shirt that's out there circulated with all my jumper buddies and all my friends, and yeah, never done a damn thing with it. So,
well, there
and
you go.
they'll always wear it,
Cool
and
t-shirt, though.
it's a cool t-shirt. I'm gonna send you one, but it's really rewarding when you see it and you're like, oh yeah, I still haven't done shit with it. That's awesome. So
hey, what's the Texas half-ass, right? You just said at the beginning. It's kind of a Texas thing, right? Don't half-ass it. My dad used to say it all the time. Don't half-ass it. And what do? Sometimes I'm half-assing it, man. And then as long as you notice it and then kind of correct it, then you'll be all right.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
So you've penned all these books. Did you have a favorite? What was your most unique one, would you say?
I mean, 100 Deadly Skills Combat Edition was my favorite because I got to go visit and hang out with these badasses in different fighting worlds, right? So, go hang out with Pat McNamara. He's a legend in the Delta Force world, and get his philosophy on, fighting and mindset. And then I did it all in a van, cruised the country. It was during the pandemic, so the highways were empty. There was absolutely no one on the roads. I'm in my little adventure van and with this Netflix video guy hanging out with me for 30 days. We hit 16 dudes in 30 days across the country, 11,000 miles, barely slept, and then just drove and filmed the whole time. And the best part of the project was, one, hanging out with the guys, right? They're all legends in their own little worlds. The first American ninja, I went and hung out with him. The guy I grew up on, Stephen K. Hayes, right?
Yeah.
And put him in the book. And then, of course, Hell's Angels, right? Like, hey, they've got great tips that are very like, well, most of us are wearing ankle leashes, so cops are always watching us and we can't carry guns. So what I did is I just manufactured that weapon. Do you see it? And I'm looking at his Harley and I'm like, no, I don't see it. He's like, look a little closer right there on the front fork. And I kind of look and I see this like chunk of metal. I'm like, yeah, I see that metal piece right there. He's like, that's a riding lawnmower blade. And I just put a handle on it. So anybody fucks with me, I'll just hack at him. since I can't carry a gun. And he had it magnetized to his front fork.
Oh
And you
my
couldn't even
gosh.
see it. It blended in with the bike, but it had this handle and it was a riding lawnmower blade. And, if he needed to, chop somebody up, I guess, it's a Hell's Angel. So what do I know? But yeah, and then the next, other than hanging out with these very crazy, creative badasses, is then putting it all together, right? So putting that book together was cool because it was illustrated, and then it also, this was before QR codes were cool. I had QR codes put on every illustration that then
Mm,
led to this really high end video on how to do that skill by that guy, right? So Combat Edition is definitely like the best fighting book out there because you've got the narrative, you've got the illustration, and then you've got it supported by a video with the guy teaching that skill. And it's it was by far second place is Rugged Life that you referred to. I got to travel the world and hang out with these travel the states, hang out with these homesteaders, people that live off grid, and learn just how creative they are at getting by each day. And you quickly realize like that off grid game is probably easier in the 1800s than it is now because modern technology prevents you from being as creative as you might want to be,
yeah.
if that makes sense. Even though they're off grid, they still rely on Amazon to deliver certain things that they need to keep their land growing vegetables or whatever it is they're doing. And, but it is amazing to see it. And most of them, have big families. There's 8 kids. And as soon as they
Wow.
turn 3 years old, they're working the land
Yep.
barefoot, all these kids running around barefoot. I was like, man, aren't you worried about like splinters or something? They're like, no, we're fine. And they're just roaming around, but they all have a job every morning. One's doing, watering the pigs, and another one's doing this and another one's doing that. And, another kid was fixing the generator while I was standing there, like knows how to troubleshoot a generator. I mean, so that's
Wow.
why Rugged Life I call it's it's a book full of skills your dad forgot to teach you, right? And because we've all forgotten it. 100 years ago, every single American knew how to do what those kids know how to do. Now we don't know how to do any of it, right?
Yep.
The pandemic taught us that we don't know shit. And so that, when Penguin Random House, it was their idea. They're like, hey, we think a homesteading book would do really well right now. And I was like, all right, it was fucking awesome. But amazing to see these
Dude.
families live like that.
It's amazing though the opportunities you're getting and just the inside look that you're getting because you're right. We're so self-reliant now on technology and Amazon and just all these things to keep our life motoring. And then that shit falls apart. COVID, like for instance, they call it the Snowmageddon here in Texas. Remember a couple years
Oh yeah.
ago?
Oh yeah.
I'm from Detroit. I'm from Michigan. So snow to me, matter of fact, Chris Kyle, when he was alive, he was like, he texted me when I was in Michigan. He's like, would you please explain to me what this fucking white stuff in the sky is? And it's like a couple little flakes of snow coming down. And I sent a picture of an 8-foot berm of snow in Michigan. I'm like, you mean this? He's like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And
Right.
so I remember we were sitting there in our neighborhood and, everything was shut down. And then they started doing those rolling blackouts and people were just freaking out. And this woman gets on the like Facebook page for our sub and she's like, hey, does anybody know when the heat or the power is going to come back on because my food is starting to fall apart in our fridge. It's starting to get warm. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what the fuck did she just say? My wife's like, chill out. And I'm like, take your food out of the fridge and put it in the snow outside. And so we have, as a culture, just become so lazy. And for you to get inside access to see this stuff and bring it back to bring it back to where we used to be and then share it with everybody, that's huge, man. Because
Yeah.
these are skill sets that we all want to teach our children. We want to know ourselves too,
Right. Yeah,
and
no, you nailed it, man. You need it. You definitely need it as a just in case. And it goes back to the sayings we always hear. It's better to know it than not. Right. I mean, and so for me, the goal is always, how do you deliver this much information that's actually digestible and you can retain it? Right. Because as we all get older, retention up here in the brain becomes more and more difficult. But that's why I illustrate everything, because it helps with retention. When you see the pictures and you read the narrative, you're probably going to retain it way better than if it was just a book full of words. You know what I mean?
Well, you can also break it down too, like the Bible, right? You can take sections at a time, really digest it, go back to it. Me, I'm like I like to look at things a couple times to really
Yeah.
ingrain it, which is badass. And then the QR codes, they're the sexiest thing around because if you have to update something, you can switch
Right.
it. It's
Yeah.
that's bitching, man. So,
Yeah.
dude,
Good stuff.
you're a fucking dangerous weapon, dude.
I don't know about that. I feel broken. I feel like a broken weapon. Man, I just try to get out of bed each day.
Dude.
Knees and neck and my shoulders, it's all the same shit I'm sure you're dealing with, but it's like
Yeah.
Motrin, just more Motrin, I'll be fine.
My problem is I continue to do this shit. Like I
Yeah.
haven't stopped yet. So I don't know what's coming, but I know it's not going to be good.
Yeah. No, I have to, I've definitely on the Motrin train and just to keep things going in the gym or keep the combatives piece going, whatever it is, whatever your flavor is, it definitely, you got to start supplementing it with drugs in order to get through it.
Dude, I was actually speaking of your show, by the way. It was so I watched some of it and some of the shorts that you were making. And I watched your specific one with Patrick McNamara, and that introduced me to him because I didn't know who he was. And it's
Yeah.
interesting how he can be like a warrior type, and then he switches, and he's just the biggest goofball. He says some of the funniest shit,
Yeah.
and and it gives me a good look too because people will call me from time to time and like, hey, what do you think about this or what do you think about that shooting this weapon? What do you think about this hand to hand? Whatever. And I only have an inside look from what I was trained with, right? So to see other groups and to learn from other groups and see how the Green Berets do assaults differently than the SEALs and all this stuff, it just builds that bigger toolbox for you. So
Yeah.
um, all these books are on your website. You get them anywhere else. You get them at Amazon. You get them on bookstores.
Yeah, all the books are available through Amazon, which is the easy button, but they're also available in print at most of your Barnes and Nobles and um, any of those bookstores. Yeah, easy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Check it out. Everybody who's listening. I mean, this is the same thing. Every time we release this and somebody's got a book, they're like, I'm going and buying that today or tomorrow. So I'm sure you're going to see a wave of people buying these books. And these are really cool too, because it's not just hey, I'm Clint Emerson and this is my life story. So there I was doing badass
yeah,
shit.
yeah.
It's pretty cool. I'm still waiting for that book to come out, by the way, from you.
Well, there is kind of sort of that book out there, but I took a different approach. So it's it came out. That's a funny story too. It came out right when Trump's first run and the Russia scandal. So the marketing for the book was completely fucked by the Pentagon because, as you know, we have to get this stuff reviewed.
Yep.
They like to sit on manuscripts for about a year. At least that's what they did to me. Then they gave it back to me, 100 pages of it redacted
Come on.
of non classified information. It was very subjective. That's when you start learning, like, okay, this isn't a true like process. This is just some dude who gets to decide freely on what's secret and what isn't, right? Because I definitely know what's secret and what is not.
For
Most
sure.
of us do. And I would never talk about anything. So to hear that there's 100 pages redacted ruined the book. So the publisher was like, "Hey, we gotta salvage this thing, piece it together in a different way." So spent another 6 months fixing it. By then, we had missed our big marketing release window because these publishers, they rack and stack. They got hundreds of books. Yours is coming out on this day, and there's another 100 coming out the next day. So
Yeah.
you have to like be very thoughtful. You have to stay with it. I even felt like the Pentagon was just doing it on purpose to guys like us,
Sure.
because they knew that it would screw up the cycle. So, long story short, the right kind of crazy didn't get any. That's the title, and it didn't get. I was supposed to go on the Today Show, and I was supposed to do all these things, and it all got canceled because timing. But
I
it turned
remember
out,
this now. I remember this happening now.
yeah,
So you were sitting on the cover, your tattoo
yeah,
showing, your slick
yeah.
back hair.
They did, yeah, they did a cheesy cover. Not my idea, obviously. Simon and Schuster. It's their fault. But yeah, they put you on the front with the, because of my American flag, and they
Yeah.
make you do all that stupid stuff. But it actually is a funny book. It's not about really operations. It's like just funny shit. That's what it turned into, is just funny stories, from even me as a kid growing up in Saudi, fucking with Arabs, to growing up to being an adult and fucking with Arabs again, so it's a story of my life. So that's pretty much the book.
What a shit show, though. I mean, I understand that, because talking to Jack Carr and just
Yeah.
seeing some of these guys who are on these deadlines, and they're just massive pressure to get shit completed. And then they send this back to you. Because I went through that process. I wrote a history book.
Yeah.
And I found out that while you said yours are sitting next to the shitter in a man's bathroom, mine were apparently sitting in the shitter in the man's bathroom.
I doubt
So, but I sent it out, and it was a history book, and it was nothing about really the SEAL teams or that. And the guy was like, all right, how this typically works is, I'm going to read it, give me 6 weeks to read it, and then I'll come back to you with redactions, and then we can continue to go from there. And just so happened that a third grader wrote it, so it kind of was easy to read, and he read it very quickly. And it came back, and it was just like seeing the guys that have written books just get their asses handed to them. I mean, that fucks you so massively too, because they're taking out the bulk of what is going to really be received well from the viewer.
Yeah.
And so now you got to be creative and come up with that. That's fucked, man.
It was. It was just unfortunate, because you put a lot of effort into that stuff, and that book is also illustrated. They even blacked out illustrations.
Wow.
Like I tell one story because it's funny, about us putting a tracking device on Anwar al-Awlaki's driver's car in Sana'a, Yemen, right? And they blacked out, and I had MQ9 support, right? I've got my own Predator, and they're watching my back, and nothing's secret, but they decided, well, we're going to black out a drawing of an MQ9 that you can Google. Like there's plenty of pictures of a Predator, online. It's so subjective and so stupid that, you just shake your head. You don't even understand it. They don't explain it either. They just give it to you all blacked out and waste a whole bunch of time. And then you play catch up, and then it's a flop. So that book was a flop for sure, because it didn't get any marketing at all. And then, yeah.
Well,
Oh, well.
maybe going back to the original manuscript and re-releasing it.
I think these days you could get away with it.
I'm pretty sure.
Jack and I, we both, through Simon and Schuster, we have the same publicist, and we had the same, well, my editor sat in the office next to his editor, and we had, on our books 2 and 3, we both had like called each other and said, like, are you getting it reviewed at the Pentagon? And he's like, no, I don't think I'm going to do it this time. I was like, I'm not doing it either. So we stopped. Like, we're not giving you this opportunity anymore, especially since it's such a hokey, subjective. They don't have a true method to the madness. If you take my manuscript and send it to the CIA, the FBI, and NSA, but yet none of them redacted anything, but Warcom did, that's when okay, that's just another SEAL being a dick to a SEAL who wrote a book.
So that's just it, right? It's that human barrier, that one person who gets to decide. Because I did the same thing. I went through, the Pentagon for that approval, and then I ended up sending it to Naval Special Warfare just because I was like, I want that extra barrier. Had to go through Secret Service for another guy who was in the book. Yeah. And Naval Special Warfare wrote back and said, we don't have somebody who reviews this stuff. And I'm like, could you review it anyway? I would like the seal of approval that says you guys have read it and it's all good. And then they finally came back and they're like, yeah, you're good. Like, if you're approved by the Pentagon, you're good. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So, man, well, I definitely think you should re-release it into its true form, because we were at the UDTCU Museum for one of their events a couple years ago. A bunch of us who served at 7 were all joking around about, like, we should write this book. And it literally is called the Perfect Op or something, where we walk through the entire process of the entire operation from like soup to nuts, like waking up, going to hitting the gym, eating some chow, getting your information, start mission planning, all that stuff, and working our way all the way up to getting our full kit on, doing some rehearsals, and then getting out to the bird, and then the last page you flip to it and it says, and then it got kanked.
Yeah, that would be exactly,
Yeah.
the dry hole,
Yeah.
100 dry holes for every good hole. So yeah.
Ugh. Dude, you've got so much. I mean, you've done so much post service, and I think I've been out longer than you, and it's always exciting to see people who have done more than me because it gets me fired up to want to push it. Um, I'm trying
Yeah,
to
man.
stay. I'm trying to keep it level, but you have accomplished a shit ton. And what's cool is you're able to take the information and articulate it to people who can understand it. I can't do that, so it's really cool. And by the way, you had a successful podcast. You have to do another one because it was by far the most fun I have been on.
Yeah.
It's very witty, it's very detailed. Um, everybody, I'm going to tell everybody when this comes out, go to his social media and blast him every single day saying, start a fucking podcast to get it going because you're very good at what you do, man.
Well, I appreciate that, buddy. I do. It was a lot of fun doing it, but as you know, we part of being an entrepreneur, sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't, especially when you're making deals with people.
Yeah.
So that's an example of it didn't work out.
There's a
Sometimes you get
road.
kicked in the nuts, whether you want to or not. It's like, fuck. But oh well, move on.
Moving on and moving up and doing another one.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
I can't wait.
Thanks.
Can't wait. So I always like to jump into this because, this is something that really shows the human side of the operator, but also gives us some perspective on a story we might not know. So can you share with us a story that either kind of changed the trajectory of your life? Doesn't have to be in service. Somebody who did something in service that may have changed your life, or just the heroism, but a story that most people wouldn't know that you'd want to share.
Oh man, there's a bunch, but the one that kind of jumps to the top um, was when Extortion 17 went down. I was at the command when that happened. I remember I was in country, I was in town. I remember coming into the command that morning, and the new building is the largest skiff in the world. Most people don't know that, but the new SEAL Team 6 building is like 200,000 square feet, multi-deck. And as soon as you walk through the front door, you're inside the skiff.
Wow.
Right. That new building, when you come in behind the quarter deck is like a big conference room or classroom, if you will. And there was a vibe and there was a feeling in the air, and you knew something wasn't up, and you could just tell like something bad was going on. And as I walked past that room, I saw all these tables set up in a huge circle. And on the front of each table was a guy's name. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And you start looking at the names, and I'm like, oh, it's Matt, guys I've known for years, right? And I was like, then I asked someone in the room who was kind of prepping it, like, what is all that? And it was like one of the, how we got sailors or people that work the quarter deck and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Support folks, and you're like, hey, what's going on? They're like, oh, you didn't hear? I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, the fucking bird went down, and and it's bad. And at that point, that's when my heart just fucking dropped, because now I know what all those names mean, right?
Yeah.
And so immediately they're assigning any of us that are around as like next to NKO officers. You remember that, where you gotta and so, you're digging out your dress blues and flying across the country, knocking on doors and having to break the news officially, even though it was already on Fox. I remember being at an airport and people just coming up saying they're sorry, right? Even I hadn't even had a chance to go tell the family yet, right? It just made the news so quickly. And, there's lots you feel during those moments. The first piece was like the patriotism of everyone at those airports kind of knew, which was crazy to me. I'm wearing dress blues and they knew exactly. And I had two, support officers that were with me, like regular Navy officers. And we tried our best where a SEAL was showing up to every single door. We didn't want the family to just see some, Navy giving his condolences, and so we pulled it off. But going to those doors, it was like a humbling experience that it's an honor to kind of do that for your buddies, but it's also like the biggest fucking nightmare. Like I in grave detail can tell you what every single door and doorknob and entryway of those homes look like. Because right when you put your hand up there to do that knock, it's it's just sad and powerful at the same time. It's a very, very, very moving moment. But the part that really got me was, once you could do all that, then the bodies came back on the C-17s. They land in Dover. We go up there to receive the bodies, and it's a very ceremonial, silent process when the C-17s back up to the doors, and then they bring each, flag draped coffin down and present them. And you got the families, and you've got pretty much everyone
Yeah.
from the president all the way down the line standing there. And I had my family was not able to get off the runway. They had landed in DC, and there was lightning or something, and they text the son. He texts me and he's like, Clint, like, we're not going to make it in time, and I'm like, holy shit, right? This family just needed to get there so they could see their dad come off the plane.
Oh, okay. One of the families. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's texting me like they're not listening. So I'm like, at that time, I had like this pretty cool network inside the government, having been at the NSA, then going to SEAL Team 6. I had this great network inside the loop, inside the Beltway in DC. So I hit up FBI, TSA guys, like, get that fucking plane off the runway. And sure enough, they like approved, fucking took off. Then I was hitting up everybody in Philly, because that's where you land, you land in Philly, and had the Pennsylvania state troopers. They literally got the family off the plane, put them in Suburbans stacked. They had this flying wedge of fucking cops on the highway at 120 miles an hour to the Delaware line. Then at the Delaware line, those troopers took over, right? Created this flying wedge at 120 miles an hour, straight to the front gate of Dover. Secret Service, I had them line up their cars and block any turn options so that when those Suburbans came in, they just knew how to get back to the hangar where we were at. I was standing next to Obama's limousine, the tank or whatever the hell they call that thing, and the Beast, right? The Beast, is that what they call it? Yeah. And received them. And of course, the kids, as horrible of a day it was, those kids had these shit-eating grins, which was the best feeling in the world, because they were just had this like presidential first-class treatment getting from Pennsylvania to Delaware and on base. And then they had just missed their dad coming off the plane. And I kind of let them know, like, hey, all the bodies are done, but I think I set something up pretty special for you. So I took him to this back room. And at the time, my buds class, he was basically our OIC, whatever you call the buds class leader. But
Class leader.
It was Jeff Agers.
Oh,
Jeff happened to be, at the time, the counterterrorism advisor to the president, to Obama. And so I saw him before the kids got there. And I was like, hey, can we just get 5 minutes of Obama's time? And he was like, let me see what I can do, So I took these kids to this back room as things were starting to everyone was already leaving, right? And just as I tell them, like, hey, no promises, but I'm going to try, see if the president can come in, I turn around, Obama's already standing there. Wow. That guy sat down. And as I tried to leave, he's like, no, you can stay. And so I stood in there, and that guy let those kids, the daughter, the son, and the wife cry on his fucking shoulder for 20 minutes straight. I mean, it, to this day still breaks me too. Cause I was just like, man, it's just that whole time period was such a blurry, haunting moment, but you saw so much humanity in every second of it, right? I mean, you saw a bunch of tough guys turn into the softest, like most compassionate, empathetic humans on the fucking planet, right? To hold the command together, to hold those families together and make sure everyone felt special in those moments. And it just, once it happened, once we got through it, I mean, it also made the command like fucking bulletproof afterwards. Like there was nothing that, was going to affect us. And, it also woke you up that, hey, we're human,
Yeah.
and you've got to strive every day, whether it's in safety or performance, which are really the two grading criteria of any special operation unit. It's performance, safety, performance, safety. Now move as fast as you fucking can and be safe about it. Right. So, it was humbling. It was horrible. It was beautiful. It was every fucking emotion you can think of wrapped up in a disaster. But yeah, that one definitely is always near and dear. And I think this is the first time I've actually shared that out loud. So there you go.
Wow.
Fucking, yeah.
I appreciate you doing that, man. I mean, this is the biggest thing today is, when we were first in, what class were you?
203.
Old school, baby. I was 246.
Making my gray hairs come out when you say that.
But you know the deal, man. It's like I joined the team and, I was very fortunate where within my platoon, everybody was way older than me. And so I had already had this idea of like, okay, first of all, these guys are SEALs, but also look up to them. And they've got a lot of age on me. So it's just like all these mentors. And so what do is you just shut your mouth because you got to learn, you got to become a SEAL. And then when you come back from a deployment and they ask me, I mean, this is the funniest shit. I get blown up on my first deployment. I got rocked. I got hurt. We all got busted up. And I come back and I have to fill out this cheat sheet on how do I feel post deployment. And I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. And you write that I'm good and it just goes through. And you're like, I got fucking IED'd. We drove over a 155 pressure plated IED and I'm good. And you just continue to do that. And you don't, until somebody who you look at as a mentor steps up and say, I'm not good. I'm struggling. I've had enough combat. I've lost too many teammates and I'm fucking tired of it. And it's okay not to be okay. We can reboot that. But keeping quiet and silent forever, we can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
So, for you to be able to talk about this and see the humility and the humbleness of all the guys come out, which is all there for all of us, it's a rewarding thing and it's happening more and more now, which is great. I mean, when my best friend, David Metcalf and the teams, unfortunately he lost his life to suicide 2019. And he was the guy I looked up to. And it crushed me. And I remember what you were talking about with, when extortion happened, I was out already and I was legitimately at a bar when I got the word. And immediately my heart sank and I'm like, I know plenty of those guys over there. I'm like, oh my God. And you're just like, oh my gosh, who is it? And I didn't even care, like, they didn't ask the question, who exactly was it? Which guys? Just the fact that I got word that a boatload of dudes had just perished. And I was like, I feel gross. This is the thing that I always tell people. They're like, what was the hardest part of being a SEAL? And I was like, losing a brother, because there's no training for it.
Yeah, no, you focus on everything else, but that the postmortem is fucking ruthless, or it can be, unless you get it out there and deal with it in some form or fashion. And I think on my way out, I had to go through a great program. At the time, it was called NICO. I don't know what they call it now, but
I think it's still NICO.
Oh, they still got it. Yeah. I mean, it was very limited at the time, and it was only for us or special operation guys. It was in its infancy, but basically admitted to Walter Reed for 30 days. And you're doing group counseling, you're doing individual counseling, and then in between you're doing physicals. By the time you're done with the 30 days, you've done, like, I did 161 different appointments. Can you imagine that? 161 different doctor appointments.
Holy crap.
In 30 days. So you come out of there knowing everything that's wrong with your brain, everything that's wrong with you emotionally, everything that's wrong with you physically, and your medical record goes from maybe 2 inches to like 6 inches, and you're like, wow, I am really fucked up. Like, there's a lot of shit that's wrong. You come out of there with glasses, hearing aids, a fucking cane. I mean, it's like, it's pretty funny, but what a great program. And if I hadn't done that one, I don't know, man. Because it kind of put you in a position where you had to talk, and it made it easier because you're with some of your buddies that are like, oh, okay, let's talk about this. And the worst thing is, you take a bunch of team guys and go, okay, today we're going to try art therapy. Okay. So pull out your paintbrushes and, I see the value in that, but for us, we're all looking at each other like, what? And then the very next one after that was music therapy, and we all had bongos. And you had to get into rhythm with one another, and we're all once again looking at each other like, what the fuck are we doing here? But they expose you to enough different kinds of therapy and healing. You did yoga. I mean, man, you did everything. In retrospect, I'm like, every fucking service member should be able to go through that, regardless of whether you have the right. Because for me, in order to go, you had to have certain symptoms. You had to have nightmares. You had to have migraines. You had to have all these things. And it was the only way that you could go. But I think, if anything, I mean, the entire United States military, especially the portion that went through combat, should certainly have that available to them so they can have a more productive post-career life,
100%. When I got out in 2010, we didn't have NICO.
Yeah.
So it was like, I worked for damn near almost 3 years to become a SEAL and get on a team and become operational. And then, I mean, it was like, I'm put in my shit. I'm getting out. I'm not going to re-up. And I was out as quick as can be. And it was the simplest, like, okay, here you go. And I'm like,
yeah.
what? So I get out and I'm living in Texas and I'm going to work and I'm just like, I can't believe it. Like I guess I'm fine. I guess everything's okay. They even forgot so I had a Purple Heart and they didn't have it on my DD-214. So when I was at the processor, I was like, I have a Purple Heart. You can put that on there. And they're like, oh, you do? And so you have any proof? I was like, well, yeah, here's the award right here. And they're like, oh, cool. I was like, oh, let me just type in. I was like, I also have a Navy Cross.
Yeah, I didn't get mine updated. There's like Bronze Stars that, and when you're at the command, you're like, whatever, I don't give a fuck. Like, I didn't care about any of it. So when I looked at my DD-214 and saw it was, I didn't even bother. I was like, just get me the fuck out of here at this point.
Yeah. Exactly
now
right.
I wish I would have had it corrected, but it doesn't matter.
You can go through your congressman.
You can? Okay.
Easy day. Yeah, your congressman can help out with that. In fact, I'm actually going to talk to our congressman because what I find interesting is, we have the post 9/11 GI Bill. And so everybody that signed post 9/11 gets that GI Bill, which is good for 20 years. So if in theory, I would be coming up on that mark of next year at the end of the year, losing the GI Bill. And then in 2013, they signed a new act where anybody who signed post 2013 gets it for life. My question is, the hardest part of operations, in my opinion, was Iraq and Afghanistan during the early 2000s. So you're telling me that the war fighters, the real war fighters, are getting shit canned from the GI Bill, but these newcomers, no offense to them, but they get it for life and they might not have even seen any combat. Like, we are hosing, and we did the same shit in Vietnam, and we do the same shit all the time. Yeah. We're hosing the ones who deserve it the most. So I'm going to go talk to the congressman because that shit needs to be appealed.
I might fall into this. I don't know. I haven't looked. I don't know where I fall into that one either. That's so, yeah. Let me know.
I will.
Yeah.
Right on,
That's
man.
Awesome.
Well, quick fire. Just tell me, tell everybody listening, because we went through a lot today, the short and simplest way of what do you want people to know about you and what you do and how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah. I mean, if anything, it's, like I said, I still get a lot of satisfaction helping out for the greater good as it relates to safety and security, whether it's for your company, your school, place of worship, any of those. That's what I want to do. That's what I do. That's what I want to keep doing. So you can go to escapethewolf.com. Escapethewolf.com is the company, and you'll see all the offerings there, but ClintEmerson.com will get you there as well. So that's pretty easy.
Right on, brother. Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate you being on, man. We're going to blast this thing out, and we're going to find you some clients. And here's my one request for you. When you go to do these red team deals where you're breaking in at night and doing all this cool stuff,
Yeah.
you're probably going to get access to the roofs. I happen to be a base jumper. I'm just saying, maybe we could work something out.
What's your minimum number of stories you need?
I like 200 feet. So anything
200.
above 200 would be
So
good.
20-story plus.
Yeah. We can work under that. I'll just have to take a look.
I'll let you know.
All right. Sweet.
Yeah.
But,
All right. Awesome, man. Thank you for having me. Thanks for doing this, Frogman Friday. I mean, yeah, love it. I mean, we know what that's all about. Most people don't, but I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. It's always good to see you, man. And I can't wait to see what you do with this new podcast you're going to put together.
Yeah, thanks. Being voluntold. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Thanks for your time,
man.
brother.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you.
Right on, man.
Frogman.